Good morning, everybody. I'm Merritt Minnemeyer. I'm the founder and creator of Master of One Coaching, and I am here live today for Leadership Live Friday. It is, I almost said January, Lord, June 25th, right? Yes, 25th.
Yes, June 25th.
And I'm here with expert educator and my dear friend for 25 plus years, Alexa Flores-Hull. She is joining us here live from Phoenix, or just outside Phoenix, right? Close enough.
Close enough. Glendale, but that's, just a suburb of Phoenix.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, my friend.
Good morning.
All right. So I always start these shows by asking our guests to talk a little bit about your story, how you got to where you are. So tell us a little bit about you.
No problem. So you and I met eons ago. And it was actually, my story very much started there because as so many of us at the time, early mid 90s, let's say, we'll just give that little time frame there. We were looking at, college. Where do you go? Things like that. And we've chatted before that it was very much an idea of you picked the best name you could at the time, and you went where you could get in. And I had an inkling of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really sure. And my high school Spanish teacher, who was an amazing lady and still is an amazing lady, pretty much said, and took me aside one day and said, just study what you love. And I remember thinking, well, that gives me no direction. I just study what I love. That's not going to get me a job. And her quote very much, and she had a very specific way of speaking and everything. And she said, no, study what you love, and the job part, it'll work out. And I said, okay. So I really enjoyed Spanish, the language of Spanish, learning languages, culture, all that sort of stuff. So I went to Georgetown University School of Languages and Linguistics. That school is actually no longer there. It's now a different program, but I went specifically to college to study languages. Of course, my parents thought I was nuts. How are you going to get a job? What are you going to pay your bills with? And it was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. And I absolutely loved studying that content area. Had no clue what I was going to do. At one point in time, thought maybe I'll be a business minor. Yeah, that didn't work out. Maybe I'll go into journalism. Yeah, I hated that too. Ultimately decided that I liked people. We're weird, we're strange, we're awesome. So I minored in psychology and really thought that was what I was going to do after I finished my bachelor's degree. So I returned home to California after my bachelor's degree with this idea of I'll take a little bit of time off to figure out life, do, your different testing and the stuff you needed to do to be able to get into grad school. And while I was there, in that part of life, I decided that I'll get a job teaching. That's going to be a means to an end. That'll be this gap year before I go on to something bigger, to what I'm really supposed to do. And I fell in love with it. I hated the fact that I fell in love with it because no, I was not meant to be a teacher. Who goes to college to do that? We're supposed to do all these bigger things is kind of what I had been told, And so I was almost embarrassed at the time. Now looking back at it, 20, 25 years ago, compared to some of my friends who had gone on to med school, became lawyers, got, their various business degrees. And here I was, a teacher, but it was something that fit. And every single day was something new. It wasn't boring. So I ended up taking some post-baccalaureate classes at ASU, got my teaching degree, and have worked my way through various, educational scenarios since then. I was at a traditional brick and mortar, so in-person, brick and mortar school, a very large 3,000 student high school, public high school, where I ended up becoming not only the department chair, but becoming part of their leadership team and doing lots of things. And I was burning out quickly. I could tell something had to give. And I started to also have some pretty bad mom guilt because I was thinking, somebody else is raising my kid. I'm going to school at the crack of dawn. I'm dropping my kids off at daycare. I'm missing all these other things because I'm with somebody else's kids instead of my own. So I knew I needed to figure out an alternative. I didn't want to leave education, but I knew something had to give. So I started looking around and hunting around at some of the different programs that are out there. And I found a graduate program through Northern Arizona University in educational technology. And it was awesome. And it was a new spark, something I really needed at the time, just a new spark, something still in education, still doing what I loved, but providing me with also that personal end. I needed to find better balance. So after completing my educational technology master's, I started hunting around like, okay, what is this going to enable me to do? What flexibility am I going to have? And I found a company that is now known as Stride Inc. that does and is well known and well versed in online education from all levels, kindergarten all the way through, professional. And I took a leap of faith. Obviously, in the education world, your teaching job is a yearly contract, and you have to re-sign your contract every year. Out here in Arizona, it's you have to have everything signed by May. And I didn't sign a contract. I just took that leap of faith and, said, okay, honey, my husband, here we go. And he had my back and he's like, well, we'll figure it out. And there was some, hesitation there because I had not been hired yet. I hadn't signed on with this new company that I had found, but I trusted that this is the direction I wanted to go. And it worked out. So at this point, it's been 11 years since I made the leap, and it's awesome. I still get to work with students. I get the flexibility also in my personal life that I really needed. And I also get to work very much with other teachers in helping design and build things and lead that like new generation, if you will, and participate in a lot of pretty groundbreaking ideas, which really came in handy in these last 18 months because we've already been kind of on those front lines. So that Spanish teacher all those years ago was right. If you do what you love, the job part will figure itself out.
Mm-hmm. It's such a great story. There's so much I can pull out of there, and not just what. And I'm assuming you're talking about Senora Romero. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
That early wisdom that you gained from an inspirational teacher through kind of following your gut and navigating it with that in mind, that sort of that North Star of I'm just going to follow my passion and follow what I love. And then, also when you became a mom and there again, following your gut, like I want to be more present for my kids, and just happening to, I'm guessing you're pretty smart lady, so you go to the technology thing, you're like, that's probably a good idea. Oh my gosh. And I remember talking to you right when COVID hit, and it's like, well, we've just pretty much like, our whole services have just blown up because everybody is using us. And you guys Stride did a lot of implementation for programs that schools that didn't have those programs. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So thankfully, obviously the biggest thing that as a teacher, you could take away, anybody, parent, student, that you could take away from these last, I kind of refer to it as like an 18-month window of the pandemic is flexibility. You had to realize that, no, things were not going to be cut and dry. It wasn't going to be one size fits all. And you needed to meet the students and the families where they were at that moment in time and where you wanted them to eventually be. And that is what educational technology does and enables you to do. And we have been doing that for many, many years. So thankfully, instead of somebody having to reinvent the wheel, there was several families, so individually families came on board, but then also there were school districts that partnered and basically said, look, there's too much going on. Our own teachers have their own lives that have been completely disrupted. They don't need to be reinventing the wheel. How about if we partner up and you help us to meet the needs of our students, meet the needs of our school districts, of, essentially our clients, right? If you think about it, teaching is very much a business. People don't like to think about it like that, but it's a business. You have customers, you have to deliver goods, and you need that customer satisfaction. And in many places, public schools are also what out here is referred to as open enrollment, meaning families can shop around. You can go not just to the school where you are zoned for. So if somebody isn't happy with the service you are providing, in this case, their child's education and well-being, they'll go somewhere else. Well, then you have word of mouth, and the next thing you know, groups of friends and groups of families, and it becomes an entirely, we could go off on a whole other tangent right there, because then it starts impacting your funding and yada, yada, yada. But essentially, you need to, at the base, always remember, and one of the leaders I work with currently, she has this awesome saying. She always says, remember the student in the chair. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're planning for, whatever is happening, when it's all said and done, what you're doing is for that student in the chair. So if you are ever confused or you are not sure what is your driving, motivating factor, think about the student in the chair. And so that has been something that the tools may come and go and change and become different as it necessitates. But essentially, you have that customer, that client, that student that you're working with.
I love that too. That's such a great thing to think about too, because in any business, right? Not that that always right, that dynamic is shifting in the culture, but that their needs need to be met, and their needs are going to be changing. I mean, you mentioned earlier about how, when you and I were coming up, and the goal for our generation in our particular pocket in culture and society was also go to the best school you can. Yeah. And, whether or not it's really what you really want to do. That's what
and it wasn't even, the end goal wasn't even, what are you going to do after college?
No,
it was just, right. We're going to get you to college.
Right.
And then once you get into college, you're on your own.
Right. Yeah.
But we're seeing, I think, a change more and more. And you just brought it up a second ago of at all levels, people are remembering. It's not that anyone had ever really truly forgotten, but we're remembering that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. Everyone is so afraid of being wrong that in the education world, you'll see kids that, at all levels, little bitties all the way up to through college, where they'll Google an answer, right? Online, the academic integrity of so many things is completely blown out the water because somebody's, one, maybe they don't want to do the work, or two, they're afraid of being wrong.
Right.
And then in a classroom setting, there is this overwhelming across the board again, where you can ask a question, crickets. Because somebody doesn't want to raise their hand to answer that question, because heaven forbid what they say is wrong. So having to remember that it's okay, to ask for help. It's okay to be wrong. You can learn from that. And we are seeing that in many different industries across the way. And one of the things that my kind of goal at the ground level with education is telling people that, learn this now so that you don't get to my age and you're having to relearn it with, different repercussions. And it was even something in the book Atomic Habits they talk about, where in wanting to be so much part of that herd mentality, that you can have somebody in a room, 100 people. One person knows the truth and has been told the truth, knows the correct answer. And the other 99 know that they are purposely giving an incorrect answer. And that one person will change their mind because they're so afraid of being that person, the one that stands out. So really having to learn that it's okay, ask for help. It's okay. And you're not going to, drop dead on the spot if you're wrong.
Well, that's such an interesting thing that you just pointed out too, because I see it all the time in my clients who are, leaders of businesses and founders of businesses, who are they're the ones who are seeking out the support are often the ones who are going against the grain, right?
Yeah.
And they're often frustrated or confused by what people are not. They're afraid to fail. And in business, certainly, you want to fail as fast as you can, because you want to learn what it is that you don't know, so that you can grow and accommodate that. But so many of their employees, they're terrified to go against the boss because they don't want to get fired. They don't want to get called out.
They don't want to be that person.
They don't want to be that person. Right. Yeah. And so that carries on, throughout their life. And it also calls into mind the play, 12 Angry Men, right? I mean,
yes,
we could connect that fear of being wrong or going against the grain to the implications of democracy, right? And where do we get to the point where we are so afraid of having respectful discourse? And that's a whole nother can of worms.
Exactly.
But it seems like it's probably grounded in large part in this idea of, I don't want to be wrong, or I don't want to go against the grain, because what if I got called out, or what if I lose something, or whatever relationships, whatever the stories are that we're telling ourselves.
And there's true fear there. It's that moment of fear. And so part of my job is, and you and I spoke earlier that I was teasing, thinking, I have imposter syndrome. What am I doing on this leadership thing? But as I started to kind of process it all, my form of leadership isn't so much come follow me. My form of leadership and what I do, it's more, I've got your back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here. I've got your back. Where do you want to go? All right. I'm going to help put you on that path. Chances are you might mess up, and that's okay. You might mess up. And guess what? I'm going to be right here when you need me. Mm-hmm. And there are those two different dynamics of leadership. You don't have to be the one forging the path. You can be the one behind, making sure everyone is safely getting where they need to be. And that very much is online education right now. Mm-hmm. There is, you have those that are, blazing that trail. They're setting up all the new tech tools. They're developing everything under the sun. And then you have those that are, using those items. They're helping with inclusivity, diversity. We're helping those kids that maybe just aren't, and not just children, but of any age level, who didn't fit into that old brick and mortar, world, and they needed a safe spot to land. And so thinking outside of the box has really helped provide that. Families that, their life just isn't the traditional Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of life. Being able to offer flexibility, being able to realize that, some kids can't sit still, not because there's something wrong with them, but that's just not how they're wired. Mm-hmm. People are just not wired to just be still. And the educational industry right now, for so many, we've taken out a lot of that active, hands-on learning type of places. And so we're starting to, again, remember that those hands-on things, those trade schools, woodworking, culinary arts, some of those things that we as a society, if we don't start to necessarily build back up that entire segment of our population, we're going to lose out, because we're not going to have that foundational groundwork that keeps everybody moving. Mm-hmm. Not everybody can be a lawyer,
or wants to be.
Yeah. Or wants to be, exactly.
Yeah. I love that they're casing that around inclusivity and diversity too, because what you just touched on too is not just cultural diversity, ethnic, racial, gender. It's also neurodiversity.
Yeah, and emotional too.
And right, emotional diversity. I mean, I certainly have, 2 out of 3 kids in my house are not sitter-stillers at all, and the other one couldn't be bothered. I mean, what you said earlier about, he wants to Google the answer because he doesn't want to do the work, or maybe he doesn't want to be wrong. Either way, he's not interested. And he also said to me, "Mom, why do I have to go to college when everything I need to know I can learn on YouTube?" And I was like, "Well, that's an interesting point."
Yeah, well, and you know what? There's some validity to that too.
There is some, yeah. I mean,
there's true. Right. Which as a parent, it makes me cringe, because I'm like, no, you have to go do your homework. And then at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I see your point here. And then the educator in me wants to then go and have like that separate conversation. Hey, let me go talk to your teacher. What was the rationale behind this assignment? What was the driving factor? What is a kid supposed to get out of this? Because if it's just fill out a worksheet to fill out a worksheet, nobody's learning, nobody's doing anything. Chances are they've all, already shared the answers without each other. So, we really need to look at what is it that we're wanting to teach? What are we wanting to learn? But at the same time, you can't make it one size fits all. And you're also seeing that with some of the different educational theories that are out there right now. What's allowed to be taught? What can't you teach? It's like, well, it's okay to be wrong. And you can learn from your mistakes. One of the things I loved during the pandemic, which again, you have to look for the silver lining, right? Is people realized that just because it was something that we'd always done doesn't mean you have to continue doing it. And two, you can start something, you can try it. It can ultimately crash and burn. And you don't have to stick with it just for pride. Well, this is what my plan was, so this is what I have to do. No, if it didn't work, scratch it.
Yeah.
And go find something else that does. And that's true in any part of life, not just, education. Like, you don't be so stubborn and stuck in your ways that, well, this is what we're going to do and this is the plan. If it doesn't work, move on.
Well, and that's really a startup mentality.
Yeah.
So a lot of the clients I work with are founders, as I mentioned before, and that's a very much a startup mentality. Like, all right, well, you know what? Let's try it, and we'll get our hands dirty and figure it out. And if it blows up, okay, that's all right. We'll try it again. And that's I think why so many people think that starting a business is scary, right? Or going out there and forging your own path is scary because it feels like there's no net.
Yeah.
But really, if we can become our own net based on our own inner resources, which we learn in school, which we learn from amazing teachers like you and like Senora, and from and people who are teaching us to be resilient and resourceful and not afraid of screwing up, right?
Yeah.
That's
we're much stronger than we think we are.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
I love that. That's great. So let's see, how much time do we have? We have about 8 minutes or so. So you already dropped a bunch of really great golden nuggets. I want to write them all down. But like, if the question that I ask around this time is typically, if you had one golden nugget of wisdom to share, what would that be? So would it be different than what you just all shared?
Oh, one little golden nugget. Oh, goodness.
Well, you can share as many as you like. I'm not going to limit you.
I would actually probably just very much echo what was told to me, 25 years ago. And that is, do something you love, follow something you love. It won't be easy. It will not be the straight path. It will diverge and go all over the place. And sometimes those curves are not going to be fun. But if you stick to doing something that you love, the job part will work itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so. Very much so. And I still love Spanish. I still love languages and culture. And because of it, I'm able to travel and do, kind of travel. But that, ability is there. And I'm hoping to instill that in my own children, my own minions. That's very much what I call my kids. But just, do what you love. And I think your startup clients, that's going to be true of what they do. Follow that passion, follow that spark. It won't be easy. Remember that it's okay to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And, there will be times when you're wrong, and scrap it, put the ego aside, because essentially, the what's the old Stoic saying? The obstacle is the way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, I said, stick to that passion.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So you were mentioning too, and I think this is really interesting for our leadership base out there to know, in terms of as they look to hire in the next few months and years. We touched briefly on this this buzz concept out there right now, which is the Great Resignation. And that is getting some traction right now in the press about how they're predicting that up to 1/4 of the American workforce is either going to not return to work or quit their job by September. That's 25% of the American workforce. And so, and I think there's a lot of consideration of, who we want to be, how we want to be spending our time, how we don't want to be spending our time. So many of us have sacrificed our own passion, our own well-being for the paycheck. And so there's a ton, obviously, a reevaluation around that. What would you say as an educator who is essentially training the next generation, or what you've seen maybe in the last 5 or 10 years of kids who have come through and who are now entering the workforce, at post-college or post-high school or even post-grad school? Like, what are the trends that you are seeing that they are going to need or demand or look for in employers?
There is a very real, very, very real reevaluation of priorities. Mm-hmm. What is really important? Do you really need X, Y, and Z material things? If I don't really need X, Y, and Z material things, well, do I really need X, Y, and Z monetary end? So I think there is a reevaluation of that on let's take the current high school seniors. We'll use my daughter's graduating class, for example. They do a big thing every year where, the graduating class, I know, when they talk about, when you and I graduated, it was a big thing, Merit is going to, Alexa is going to. And so they made a big deal about where you were going to school, right? Not necessarily, again, what you were studying, but just where you were going to school. In my daughter's graduating class, and she had a very small class for the school she went to, it was interesting to see. I would easily say 80% of the students in her class chose community college. One, the financial aspect. Because again, if you don't have to have $100,000 or $200,000 worth of debt to go take English and math and those basics, let's just get those 2 years of community college and those prereqs done, figure out what we really want to do in life, and then transfer following a passion that we've developed versus being thrown to the sharks. Here you go, and you've got student loans. Go figure out your passion and go from there. Yeah. So we saw a lot of reevaluation of, do people really want to put money where there's uncertainty? So if you look right now in the news, there is an entire generation, the last 2 graduating classes, of students that are opting not necessarily to go to a traditional 4-year university. Enrollment numbers are down across the board. And in some areas, they are also going to be tied very much to lower income populations. There's lots of other things that could go into it. But that idea of you have to graduate high school and go to college is changing. The number of people that are retiring and leaving those kind of blue collar jobs that you and I, our generation, were told, you don't want to do that. They're starting to see a rebirth, because guess what? I can go and become an HVAC, so air conditioning, tech. I can become a plumber. I can become all of these different things without having debt, and I can make a great living for myself. And in many, many cases, become my own boss. I can set up my own company. So I think
I actually have a friend who's in my, I was gonna say, I have a friend who's in my grad program who's my same age. He's got grown children, and he had 2 master's degrees. He was in my grad program, so that was his 2nd degree. He'd been in the university as an employee for 12 years. And after he got his 2nd master's degree, he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he went and he got his plumber's license, and now he started his own business. He's so loving it. He just loves it.
Yeah, that ability to be your own person, in charge of your own life, not getting stuck in that rat race of everything. And people are seeing the true value in trade skills. there is value and importance. And a lot of that came during, what was conceived, essential workers, right? Because some things weren't essential, and those that were, you figured out the true value of stuff. So there's going to be this change, and you're going to see it at the leadership level as well, of a generation that is going to be okay and accepting again of this idea that you don't have to go to college. You don't have to do this one size fits all plan. It's, you can follow that passion in other directions.
Yeah. And as we track that through in the workforce, right? People who are going to come in and want to have different priorities as they're working, as parents, right? You were talking about that a little before. As young parents are going to have more different priorities than we were even thought we were allowed to have.
Exactly.
20 years ago. And their flexibility, right? Of course, that's a big thing now, remote work. Before it was kind of like, well, I don't know, I'm remote work. We're not really sure how that works. And it's like, well,
it works. Guess what? You make it work.
Yeah, right.
And if it didn't work, then it was a reevaluation of, well, why do we really, really need this? Whatever that was, right? If you couldn't figure out a way to make it work, well, maybe it's because you didn't really need it. Yeah. You can think about when people move houses, right? You box up everything, you get to the new house, and there's always one or two boxes that 10 years later still never were unpacked, right? They're sitting in the garage somewhere, which makes you wonder, what was in that box, and did we really, really ever need it in the first place? So it's a lot of that is going to start happening.
Yeah.
So.
And also, this idea of the implications around inclusivity and diversity and neurodiversity and all of those things that we touched on just briefly, but there's so much more to dig into there. As the education, that what we learn from education is going to translate into the workforce, and it is already. So that could be a whole nother.
Exactly. That could be a whole other episode.
When I come back, I'd love to talk more about that. That would be awesome.
Well, sure.
She's like, I don't know. It's awfully early where I am.
I love you when I got up early.
I know. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alexa, for being here. Again, Alexa is a highly educated and leader in her field. She works currently for an organization called Stride Inc. Yes?
Yep.
Which
based out of Clemson, Virginia.
Okay. And it builds and implements online curriculum for all levels now, right? We're talking not just K-12, but also higher education and education.
All the way through adult education.
Yeah. So if you're interested in finding more about that, you can reach out to her through, I guess, Facebook would be the best thing, or you can check out Stride online. Thank you so much for being here today, my friend. I love you. You are amazing, and you're such a gift. And I hope that you have a beautiful day, enjoying your last month at home with your oldest.
I know.
She goes off to college and packs up her boxes of things she doesn't need.
I know. I keep teasing. I'm going to change her room into like my own little mom den.
Oh, my mom did it. It's I left. She's like, don't let the door hit your butt on the way out. Anyway, love you. Thank you so much. I have for a second while I say goodbye, and then I'm just going to let everybody know that this is Leadership Live, and I'm Mara Minham. I'm the founder and creator of Master of One Coaching. If you're interested in more information about executive and leadership coaching as it applies to you and your world-changing vision and or your team, come check me out at masteronecoaching.com. Sign up for the newsletter there and get tips and tricks every week. And then you can also get notified when we have a Leadership Live, which is every Friday here at 10 o'clock Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and also Facebook. Profiles on Facebook. And check back to the replay too. We also send out posts and blogs based on these conversations and these wonderful leaders we have here. And we will see you next week. So everybody have a great weekend.